This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Applied Botanics, premium, consistent, and affordable wellness for all. Take care of your health and wellness, not only because the new year is upon us, but because you owe it to yourself. Each of their products features a specialized formula with targeted terpenes to give you a CBD experience that helps you live happy and healthy. And just newly added to their CBD lines, in addition to their drops, are new topicals that you can roll on and edibles to help you find your balance. Visit appliedbotanics.com today and use code word Popko Project at checkout to receive 30% off your first order. Applied Botanics, live happy and healthy. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Keller's Garden Center and Landscaping Services, located on 7 Kern Street in Exeter, Pennsylvania, just down the street from Blue Ribbon Dairy. Open through the winter, offering gift cards, poinsettia centerpieces, tropical holiday sleighs, pictures with Santa, and more. And if you are looking for snow removal services, they can take care of that too. Do not break your back this winter. Contact Keller's today and visit their social media pages for more info and hours of operation. My guest today is Mike LaRosa, Director of Brewing Operations at New Trail Brewing Company in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We get into why New Trail Brewing Company chose Williamsport as their home, how and why they are able to release a new beer every week, how Mike himself landed at New Trail Brewing Company, how the brewery gets involved in their community, getting through COVID-19, what they have planned for 2022, and so much more. If you get nothing else from this podcast other than having one of their beers and visiting their tasting room, then I've done my job. Welcome to the show, Mike LaRosa, Director of Brewing Operations of New Trail Brewing Company in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And we're live with Mike LaRosa.
Yes.
Is that how you say it? Mike LaRosa.
Yep, Mike LaRosa.
He is the Director of Brewery Operations for New Trail Brewing Company in Williamsport, correct?
Yep, Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Very cool. And I'm excited for this, and I'll tell you why. I don't know you, and you know me, so we should have a nice conversation, but this podcast is primarily, it focuses on music, musicians and artists and things like that. And so like 85% of my podcasts are related to music. But I created the Popko Project to kind of highlight, things in and around northeastern Pennsylvania and even beyond, but highlighting, things that people can do and experience. And New Trail Brewing Company is fairly new to our area. And I'm a big fan of beer. I actually have some New Trail.
Oh, nice.
This is the
Yellow Blazer.
Yellow Blazer. Yeah, I'm going to start off heavy here. This is 8.8 ABV. I have Haystacks, hazy IPA. Big fan of the hazy stuff these days. These are probably actually out of season because I feel like you guys are releasing a beer or two every single week.
It's generally 1 or 2 a week. Yellow Blazer would have been 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now, which is still well within code for us.
Sure.
Haystacks, I'd have to go back and look. I'd have to say it's probably at least a month or 2 old at this point, but I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest. I since we do a new beer every week, or sometimes 2 beers a week, I sometimes have a bit of a fishbowl memory when it comes to when things were. I'm worried about 4 to 8 weeks from now, more than I am right about now.
Yeah. Well, we had this scheduled a few months ago.
That's right.
We had to reschedule, no big deal. So I had a bunch stashed away. I drank a few of them. So
I'd hope so. It's probably been about a month or so.
Yeah, it's great beer. And a lot of these beers seem to be high in ABV. Not a lot, but I mean, a lot of the most recent ones have been pretty heavy.
Yeah, generally between like end of October to December, we hit a lot of heavy hitters when it comes to double IPAs, which for us generally means above 8% and below 10.5%. So if I remember correctly, Yellow Blazer is a hazy double. It's our collaboration with Hitchhiker. Those guys are out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you haven't been to see them or had their beer, they do distribute it. It is fantastic. But Yellow Blazer, more specifically, was a double IPA brewed with oats and white wheat. We hopped it heavily with Citra and Nelson Sauvin. So Nelson Sauvin's a pretty neat hop. It's from New Zealand. It's, I'd say, probably about 10 years old now. It's really known for its like vinous white wine characteristics, as well as having like a really earthy, dank weed sort of characteristics. So that plays really well with Citra, which is kind of like the cheater hop, which I love Citra immensely because it's so diverse. Really, it kind of plays with everything. It's got everything from like orange, tangerine, grapefruit, and it blends nicely into like a pine resin. It really just depends on how you use it, when you use it, how much you use. So kind of like home base for us.
Yeah, I could definitely taste that white wine that you mentioned. But
yeah, Nelson Sauvin's an awesome hop.
Yeah, but cheers.
Yeah, cheers. I'm drinking Lazy River Pils, which is our flagship Pilsner, brewed with German Pilsner malt. It has a bit of Citra, my favorite hop, as well as Tettnang, which is a German hop known for its like I call it noble spice characteristics. It's kind of like a tea quality, so they kind of blend well together. It's kind of just kissed with hops. It's not overly bitter, overly hoppy. It's just this beer flavored beer that has a little bit of hop to it. Very cool.
Yeah. So I mentioned that New Trail has been around for about 3.5 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 3.5. We're coming up on 4 in our fourth year would start. I believe I brewed the first batch January 7th, 3.5 years ago. So
okay,
we're coming up on 2 months.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it's November 30th today, month and a few days.
Yeah. So in your Williamsport, what is there? Why Williamsport?
Why do we choose Williamsport?
Yeah.
My business partners have been doing business in Williamsport and North Central Pennsylvania for over 20 years now. Their first business was a nightclub that started about 20 or 22 years ago now, I want to say. I guess it would be 20 years ago now. And they became very prominent restaurateurs up in this area. They've owned probably about 15 liquor licenses, and they found me 5 years ago now as a consultant. They asked me to come up and help out with their brewery project, and we got along and worked well together, and I fell in love with Williamsport. So now I'm here. But they chose Williamsport 20 years ago, before the gas boom, before a lot of the industry happened up here, because of its beauty. I mean, on top of aside from the people being very, very pleasant, very nice, North Central Pennsylvania is really well known for its outdoors, right? We have some of the best trails for biking and hiking. There's 100 creeks around here if you want to go kayak. Some of the best camping is in the area in Pennsylvania up here. So we can go up to Cherry Springs and in about 40 minutes, which is one of the darkest places in Pennsylvania. So sometimes you can see the northern lights from there. It's got some of the best views of the constellations as well. So it's all right here for us.
Now, is that why you guys named it New Trail? Because obviously the New Trail is very outdoorsy. All the beer. I mean, I have upstairs too. I think it's called Tent Zipper.
Yep.
But Haystacks is one.
Yep, Haystacks is the location up here. It's near World's End.
That's cool. I never really spent much time in Williamsport, other than passing through. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's worth a visit. I mean, I don't know where you passed. I guess you could pass through to the Finger Lakes, or if you're going to New York or Canada from you're coming from Scranton.
Yeah, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're going west, you pass through us.
Yeah, I'm sure if I was going to like State College, right?
Yep, State College is right by us. We're about 40 minutes from State College, 40 minutes from State College.
Yeah, so I did see that you guys released like a whiteout beer?
Yeah, so actually, Whiteout, the beer, I believe we brewed it for the first time 2 years ago, not as a Penn State beer. It was released as a winter double
Sure.
IPA because of whiteouts, right? I
Right.
mean, where their whiteout comes from, or the idea of it. And we, being so close to Penn State, we were like, well, fuck it. Like, we're, a lot of us are Penn State fans. And we're like, let's redo the label and release it for the whiteout game. And I have to say that's probably the biggest headache that I've had my entire year was whiteout, because we must have gotten 500 phone calls about, do you have the Penn State beer? Do you have the Penn State beer? And like, we only did enough for Penn State, and we held a little bit for our brewery, and I'm still hearing about it today. And that was 2 months ago. So, but it was a lot of fun.
Will you produce more next year then, or?
We will produce more next year for the Whiteout game, but we are also releasing Whiteout in its original intention in, I think, 3 weeks. I can pull that release date up actually right now.
Will that be the same beer?
It's the same beer. We just changed the label to look more Penn State-y during the Penn State times.
Sure.
Let's see. Whiteout releases.
Well, you heard it here. If you are interested in the Whiteout beer for Penn State, you can get it in a couple weeks from now.
It'll be released with its winter label, not with the Penn State label, but we will be releasing it to the market the week of January 10th.
Okay.
So most people will see it sometime between January 13th and January 21st.
Got it. Now, we talked about you guys were doing a beer release every week. I mean, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean, people do, a handful of seasonals. They have like their flagship beers, but like I'm like in the beer store. I'm guilty. I'm there probably once a week. Maybe I drink too much, but
keeping me in business.
What's that?
I said you're keeping me in business.
Yeah, I mean, I just every time I'm in there, I see a new beer on the shelf, and I believe you're distributed by some of my friends at LT Verastro.
Yep. They're our wholesaler in your area.
Yeah, they're great people. I've had the pleasure to know Pat Verastro for a long time.
Oh, nice.
Steve Eshelman, I'm not sure if you've worked with him.
No.
Some of the beer reps there I've run into and worked with in the past too. But I mean, what's the motivation behind releasing a new beer every week?
My funny answer is that it's like I just really enjoy herding drunk cats, but it allows for a lot of creativity, right? I mean, like a lot of breweries focus on making the same beer over and over and over again, which can be a bit cumbersome for the brewers because they don't get to try new hops or get to experiment with a new technique of some sort. And having the freedom to have a new beer to kind of play with every week really allows us to do really whatever we want. So
right. That's the fun answer too, I think. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Yeah. I mean, I see it. And I'm like, I don't know how they have like the motivation to keep doing it. It's like, it's a lot of work. I mean, people think that beer happens literally overnight. And I mean, I used to do home brewing way back when, like probably 11 years ago with a good buddy of mine. And, I don't have obviously the fermentation tanks and all the kind of equipment you guys do, but I remember doing it. It was a fun afternoon with hanging out with the guys making the beer, and we had to let it sit for however many days it was. And then the yield off of it, it's like, you know what? Like, this was fun. It tastes good. But the amount of time and effort, and like, it wasn't a cost savings by any means. It's like, I'd rather just go out and buy a case or a 6-pack of good beer.
Oh, certainly. I mean, homebrewing is certainly a labor of love. I don't really think that you make out better cost-wise if you don't value your time for homebrewing. But it's a lot of fun. It's great. It's a great hobby. And brewing beer professionally is very much the same way. Like I was saying, you were asking when Haystacks was released, and I'm like, I can't even remember because I've got beer in the tanks right now that's coming out next week, the following week, and 2 weeks after that. So I'm living between not even really this week. This week's already been planned and done, and I'm working on the following 4 weeks to 4 months. So a lot of planning and effort goes into it. I mean, most IPAs for us take grain to glass anywhere from, if we're lucky, 13 days, but it's more realistically 14 to 18 days from the time that we actually brew the liquid to produce, between fermentation, dry hopping, cold conditioning, and packaging. But we definitely pride ourselves on having beer into the market faster than most people. I mean, a lot of the times our beer is being packaged on Monday and shipped to the wholesalers on Tuesday.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really hit. I mean, realistically, it could hit a shelf Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning in some cases.
Gotcha. And for people who are watching and listening to this, can you tell us a little bit about the process of a beer, from grain to glass, like you had mentioned?
Sure. Yeah. So brewing itself sort of comprises of, I'd say, three main steps. There's brewing, fermentation, and packaging, but each step has a lot of sub-steps. So brewing itself is about an 8-hour process. So you start with milling malted barley and mixing that milled malted barley with hot water, and you're creating what's called a mash. And the mash is essentially just like a big vat of oatmeal in consistency. And what we're doing is we're extracting proteins, enzymes, flavor, and sugars from the milled malted barley that's now in the mash. We then recirculate that mash so that we can clarify the wort. It kind of creates like a coffee filter thing. And then from there, we take just the liquid and transfer that into a separate vessel called the kettle, which boils the what we now call wort, WORT, which is just a fancy word for sugar water. While we're boiling the wort, we can add hops, sugar, fruits, spices, really anything you can think of into the wort during the kettle, because it sanitizes it because it's boiling. And then after it's been boiled, it gets whirlpooled, cooled down, so we can then transfer the liquid wort through a heat exchanger to bring it from from basically boiling temperatures to a temperature that the yeast can sustain, which is generally somewhere between 50 and 75 degrees for most yeasts. So that moves us into the second main step of brewing, which is fermentation. Brewers like to say that brewers make wort and yeast makes beer. Like, we don't actually make the beer, yeast does, because yeast does all the heavy lifting in making the alcohol. So yeast eats the sugar in the wort and creates two things. It creates alcohol and CO2. And once it's finished its fermentation, that generally means that it stops producing CO2, and the yeast will basically fall dormant and fall out of the beer. And that's where we will add hops for IPAs, what's called dry hopping. We can dry hop the beer then, or we can send it straight into cold conditioning, which would be like lagering for a Pilsner or a Marzen, Oktoberfest, any of those sorts of beers, which will sit cold for a long period of time. But most beers, like ales, will be cold. Let's say I cold crash the beer on Monday. It's transferable 24 hours after it's spent 24 hours cold. So we'll transfer the beer from fermentation into the conditioning tanks, and from the conditioning tanks, we package the beer. And for us, packaging beer really means hooking up a line to the bottom of the tank and sending it through our canning line or sending it through to kegs.
It sounds so easy, but it's not.
It's really not. No. But, to me,
a lot of science, right?
A lot of science, a little bit of creativity, a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love, like as I mentioned about home brewing, it was a lot of fun. And I'm sure the process is like a lot cooler with, a bigger facility, bigger tanks, and a nice, like, clean process. But I just think the idea of a brewery is so, like, I don't know, it's like, it's almost like a part of a community. And I think beer in general is that thing that, brings people together. So it kind of makes sense. I mean, we're talking about New Trail being in Williamsport, being a great place, hiking in the trails, stars, nighttime, all that kind of stuff. Like, what do you guys as a brewery provide to the area outside of just a great beer?
Yeah, I mean, We focus a lot on our local community, or at least we try to. We are partners for um, businesses that like to do fundraisers. We're always, helping out with pretty much anybody that contacts us with a raffle basket, donation basket. We try to be good partners that way. We're partners to the local economy. We draw a lot of tourism into Williamsport. I'd say there's actually at the hotels downtown, they're actually running a new trail rate. If you're coming into town and you're specifically coming to see us, they will provide you a special rate in the hotels to spend the night. So that's people shopping at local businesses. That's people going to local restaurants. That means that people are spending money in Williamsport. And then the other thing we're doing is we're trying to partner with as many people outside of our community as possible. So we just recently partnered with the PA Parks and Forest Foundation, which is kind of like the fundraising arm, I believe, for the Pennsylvania State Forest and Pennsylvania State Park program. So recently, I don't know if you followed our social media or if you've been following what beers we've been releasing. We've released now, I think, 5 state park beers, and we're raising money specifically for those parks. So $1 from every case sold from us is going directly back to those parks. So I think each park has a specific project that we're fundraising for. Forgive me for not remembering which one we're doing right now.
I'll help you out. I did take notes. I did have notes prepared.
Yeah, it's Cook. We just released Cook Forest, and I can't remember what that project's for. I think it might be for.
It's helping save the PA state tree.
Oh, okay, for the hemlock tree.
The eastern hemlock, yeah.
Yeah. So that those are the things that we're trying to do for our community. On top of being a local job provider, we employ 35 people right now, I think.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, when we started 3.5 years ago, it was a team of 3 to 5, I'd say. So we've created 30 jobs in the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what I'm trying to get at is like, I think breweries as itself, like not only great beer, but they're helping their communities, they're providing jobs. And you mentioned like the people, like a cool place will pull people to, drive an hour and a half.
Yeah, for sure. And we definitely, tried to be that place, especially for our community. We tried to be something that did not exist in our community. We tried to provide a space in a rundown area that really wasn't booming with local business to try to draw more people there. Specifically, we're in a industrial warehouse complex that houses, I think, 5 other businesses, but we're drawing people to a whole other side of town. Like, one of the main things that people say when they come into their tasting room is like, "Oh my God, I had no idea this is back here." If they're local, but if they're driving, Google, generally tells them where to go.
As far as getting your name out there, what do you do outside of utilizing social media and word of mouth?
It's been a lot of word of mouth, actually. We haven't done a lot of traditional marketing avenues. We definitely have done like billboards. We have a few sales reps for the company, and then we partnered with 7 wholesalers throughout the state. So each set of wholesalers has anywhere from 5 to 20 salespeople. So that certainly helps people while those reps aren't necessarily only going out there and beating the street and talking about New Trail, it certainly doesn't hurt that there's another person kind of fighting in our corner. But it's just been a lot of word of mouth. We definitely sponsor lots of outdoor things. So more specifically, we do a lot of trail runs. So like PA Trail Dogs or the Heinerview Challenge, one of the larger trail running competitions in the country. We sponsor the race, and that's free beers at the end of the race, but it's also just being a financial sponsor for them as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're great for the area. And that's why I love like breweries that like do that. I just think they have a great opportunity to really, this will work for your brand, but lay some roots and
yeah, for sure.
It just, I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I was just at Cape May Brewing Company over the weekend. I was on vacation. So they're the same kind of not concept, but I mean, it's a brewery. They're very into their community, and
For sure. Actually,
just,
my friend is one of the managers for the brewery there.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got a bunch of beer, brought it back home. Um, One of my favorite beers, and I had not visited yet. But Brewdog, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that,
Yeah,
that
of course.
brand or not.
Brewdog.
But I just think they have a cool thing going there, and I'm
Yeah,
hoping
very
they.
punk rock.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that. But I think their location they have closest to our area is in Pittsburgh. They just opened up that right before the pandemic hit. I think March of 2020. But
I believe their production facilities in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. Their U.S. production facilities in Ohio.
Yeah, they have an interesting concept as far as like, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about it because it seems like weird, but like they call it equity for punks, so you can be an investor, but I don't know how much, when you think of investing and there's like a chance of loss and reward, but I don't think that pertains to that concept. It's very strange, but people love the brand and they pay to have shares in the company. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I just love the concept. I think breweries have a great vibe and they have an opportunity to create just cool branding, which you guys have done. It's a cool logo. It's got the footprint or the boot print in the logo. But I mentioned, Brewdog opening a location or a brew pub, right before the pandemic. I hate talking about it because I feel like every podcast that I do, I'm talking about, the pandemic and COVID-19 and the effects it's had on businesses and people because, I mean, it's a global pandemic, so it's kind of a part of our life. So, I mean, what did you guys go through when that hit back in March of 2020?
Yeah, it's been a hard 2 years as far as living in uncertain times in business. We were fortunate that we were set up for distribution with wholesalers prior to the pandemic, that we weren't necessarily relying on people to walk in our doors to spend their money over our bar. But we definitely saw a hit happen with a lot of our restaurant partners that were serving kegs of our beer. All of a sudden that goes away. But at the same time, we were fortunate in that we were set up to sell beer at Wegmans per se, or Giant or Acme, or your local bottle shop or distributor, because they were considered essential. And we initially thought that we were going to take a really hard hit, but ultimately it was just a lot of pivoting. And we were driving a pretty big boat at that time, and we were trying to veer it left or right really quickly just based off of every week by week change. And we've grown to be a much larger boat in that time. And it's been harder and harder to steer the ship when the hits come, but we've made out okay. We buckled down and focused on distribution.
Were you forced to have any layoffs or anything like that?
Not many. Initially, there were a few layoffs. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen, but as soon as we were comfortable, we brought back on those employees, and we ended up hiring more. We've been expanding pretty consistently over the last few years.
You should give your rep at LT Verasco a kiss or a good Christmas present. I walked into Wegmans. I mentioned Wegmans before, and I have a picture on my phone because it was an end cap.
Oh yeah.
So for those of you listening or watching that don't know what an end cap in a store is, it's the end of an aisle that you see, like, for sale, items. So the beer aisles did the same thing, and it was like literally a full end cap. I think it was like 4 or 5 shelves, and it's just a big stack of New Trail.
Yeah, we certainly love our Wegmans.
Yeah, it's a great store.
It's an awesome store. But we also really like our local shops too. We definitely don't want to see people choosing to buy beer specifically over them by, we want to support local as much as we can, I guess.
Of course.
Trying to get out.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you guys were starting out and you had restaurants around you, I mean, was it pretty easy to get your beer into their restaurants, especially as a local partner?
Locally, it wasn't overly difficult, I'd say. The initial model of New Trail was to produce 5 beers. So originally, we were going to produce Lazy River Pills, Trail Ale, which is our American Amber Ale, White Ale, which is Belgian style white ale, SOB Hill, which was an American IPA, and every once in a while we were going to brew this beer called Broken Heels. And we went with that model for about 6 to 8 months. And at that time, I was still sort of consulting with my partners. I wasn't brought on as a business partner at that point. And right as I was coming on, I was like, really, hazy IPA is where everything's going. And they were like, yeah, hazy IPA is cool. And I was like, just let me start experimenting. And that was like that. The business changed overnight as soon as we were like, let's start experimenting with hazy IPA.
That's amazing. 5 beers a year, and now you're doing basically 5 a month.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was 5. There was other beers during that time. Like we produced Moonlit, which was our Imperial Stout, Belgian Triple. There was a few other beers in that time too. Sunrise, which was a Baltic porter with local coffee, and there's another beer I can't remember, but those beers weren't supposed to be year-round beers. They were just one-off beers.
Right. Yeah, Moonlit was good. I had that a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a store nearby. It's called Plaza Beverage in Pittston.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the best craft beer distributors, I think, around our area. We have Sabatini's. It's really good. And probably a handful of other ones, but yeah, I mean, they I don't know how they get through all of it, because there's so much to choose from. And saying that, like, how do you? I feel like the craft beer industry went through a huge boom, and I still feel like it's not coming down. How do you guys try and cut through all the noise, so to speak, as far as like setting yourself apart from others, or is that not important to you? You're just focused on creating a good beer and position yourselves in the right places, and the beer will sell itself, or how does that work from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, we have always just tried to be ourselves, I guess. I have a pretty strong brewing background. I've been brewing professionally now for about 12 years. So I've been all over the Mid-Atlantic, and really this was a fun project for me to kind of make the beer that I wanted to make. So I didn't, while we're always looking at what new trends are, I'm very interested and focused on just being us and creating cool company culture.
Yeah. That's important too, the company culture. I feel like a brewery would be a cool place to work, and probably not a lot of turnover. I could be wrong.
We haven't had much turnover.
Yeah. It's great. You're talking about 30, 35 people. You become almost like a family at that point.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. Do you foresee like a halt coming in the craft beer industry, or do you think it's just something that's always going to be a part of the
bubble or the shakeout?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like I said, craft beer. I mean, back in the day, you had your Miller Lite, your Coors Light, your lager, and Budweiser or whatever it might be. You can walk in a store and there's just, I mean, you almost can't even like take it all in because it's just so overwhelming because there's so many.
Sure. I mean, I think that when I started brewing 12 years ago, there was something like 2,500 breweries in America. Now I think we've crested 8,500. Might have been the last number that I saw, but I really don't know what it is today. So I don't know that it could last forever, the growth rate that it's been happening, but I don't necessarily think that one day it's just going to be like poof, it's all gone. I think that good beer will always prevail. I think people that are interested in having good craft beer will find it and support it. So
yeah, I think you're right. And as much as like it's kind of becomes part of the community, and also it's not like you make one thing and it has to stay like that forever. You can pivot.
And honestly, like I don't think that Miller Lite or Bud Light or Coors Light, Miller Bud or Coors are going to go anywhere either.
No.
Excuse me. I just don't. I think that over time, business ebbs and flows and people's interests ebb and flow. And I think the craft is beyond an experiment now. And I think it's definitely here to stay.
And you said you've been brewing professionally for 12 years now. And when I saw your title, I didn't really put together that you would be a brewer. You said brewing operations. Obviously, you had a background in it.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was that intensive. And you started talking about how you were very hands-on into, the brewing process. Like, was that, I don't know how old you are, but, when I was growing up, being a brewer was not something you went to college for, or even in science classes, something you can be like, oh, you take what I'm learning and apply it to, brewing.
Sure.
So, was this something that, did you have a background in science and you were able to apply it to what you're doing now? And how did that all work?
So I am pretty young. I'm 31 years old. I started brewing professionally when I was in college, but my brewing predates that. My father was a home brewer. So I started home brewing with my dad when I was about 17, 18 years old. And it was something that just piqued my interest. And I went to school. I have a degree in environmental studies, business, and sociology from Albright College, which is in Reading, Pennsylvania, which isn't overly far away from you. And while I was at Albright, I just sort of was like, well, it'd be neat to go work at a brewery and see what that's like. And I fell in love with it. I called every brewery within an hour and a half drive of Reading, Pennsylvania. And finally, I've gotten in at the Rock Bottom, which was in the King of Prussia Mall at the time, with Brian McConnell, who now owns the Sterling Pig Brewery in Media, Pennsylvania. And got my foot in the door and held on for dear life.
Just like that. That's it.
That was it. Now we're here. Now there's a few other stops along the way. I brewed for Saucony Creek, which was in Kutztown or is in Kutztown. I brewed for Manayunk in Philadelphia.
Oh, cool.
I was the head brewer at Kane, Kane, on the Jersey Shore. And I got headhunted from there to open up Tired Hands, the fermenteria. I was the brewery operations manager there. And I, from there, left to start a consulting company. And that was where I found New Trail in its infancy.
So when you had a consulting company, was that just consulting breweries?
Yeah, consulting breweries. I did breweries. I did a cidery as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about New Trail kind of took you out of, do you still consult, or are you just your full-time New Trail?
I would like to say that I still consult, but New Trail has sort of taken that part of my life. It's been so hectic at New Trail that I don't really have the time, but I do have a passion for startup breweries. I think it's a lot of fun to kind of help them from, words on a paper to putting beer in a glass.
What would you say is the hardest part? Starting a brewery. Let's say someone's listening right now and they love brewing beer. They don't know where to start. They would love to see themselves have a small brew pub that maybe grows into something that New Trail is now. What kind of educational insight could you give that person?
Do a lot of reading. I think that there's a lot of really great information out there, not only on starting breweries, but owning small businesses. I'd say the number one problem that startup breweries have is finding sufficient funding. So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but I would not cut corners on the quality of beer. Trying to set up the brewery so that it makes the best quality beer. That means buying the best possible equipment, finding the best brewer that you can find. That means giving them enough space and providing them with the tools that they need to make beer.
Would you encourage people in college right now, or heading to college, or not knowing what they want to do in life, to get into the industry of brewing?
Yeah, I think that brewing is creative and requires a lot of, like you said, it requires science, but it's really applied science. It's not sitting there and working out a chemistry problem on a piece of paper or anything like that. It's a lot of understanding. It's applied physics, it's applied chemistry, it's applied biology. So it does that, but it also is a lot of problem solving. It's being able to figure out an order of operations, right? How is the most efficient way to set up my day so that I can make the best quality product while not, killing myself with a 16-hour day. So I think it's a fun career. Yeah.
Where do you think you'd be if you weren't a brewery consultant or at New Trail right now?
Oh, what would I do? I think.
Where would you be?
Where would I be?
You're a young man. I mean,
yeah, I am a young man. If I hadn't found brewing, are you asking if I hadn't found brewing, what would I be doing? Or are you asking where I would like to be right now?
Well, no, you're happy at New Trail. You're happy with what you're doing right now. We're not going to get away from that. Won't deviate from that. But yeah, I mean, like,
I think that I could have been a mason, or I would have been working with heavy machinery as a rigger. I found that I have a very I have an aptitude for handling large equipment. So I think that's where I would have ended up. But I will say that 18-year-old me going to college thought that I was going to save the world and save the environment. So who knows where I would have been if I hadn't found brewing.
Yeah, it's funny when you're that young. Your parents tell you you can do whatever you want and be whatever you want, and then you get to college and you find beer and you find girls, and
yeah,
you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it turns out my parents like beer a lot, so I don't think I disappointed them there.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny. Yeah, I just I always find it interesting to see where people are now, where they started. Like, I never feel like people are in what they're in today, based on what they thought they were going to do as a kid in high school or whatever. Some do.
Yeah, I would say, I didn't think that I was gonna brew beer professionally the first time that I brewed beer, but it's a cool craft. I will say, it was more similar to the American apprenticeship, I will say, than going through like a traditional degree. Like, while I do have a bachelor's degree, none of it really has to do with brewing. It was all my time spent at Rock Bottom, as an intern, and then eventually as an assistant brewer, and just working my way up. So spending time with a tradesman who's been in the industry for years and years and years is invaluable in something like this.
It's funny too. It's like, brewing beer is a craft, right? And I feel like we've lost a lot of trade jobs and people doing those kind of jobs. Masons and electricians and plumbers and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I would say to, my son, if you want to go be a plumber, go to school to be a plumber. Like,
right.
Those guys get out of school right now and, or they just learn on the job.
Yeah. And trades like that make really, really great money,
Great money. And there's not a lot of debt coming out of what they're,
really, I mean,
it's crazy. It's crazy, you say you're 31. I just turned 39. Like, my parents, and no fault of theirs, but my dad, when he was alive, he was a surveyor, and he always used to take me out on jobs, and I'd help him hold the I guess what's called a prism or something. I can't even remember at this point, but it was not what I wanted to do with my life, and I think he tried to encourage me to kind of do it, and looking back, if he was still alive this day, I probably would have regretted it more. Maybe I would have tried to go in that field. But it was an associate's degree, and he was a surveyor making good money, and he could, made money on the side. And I just feel like a lot of that stuff is kind of lost. And we were just told,
my dad was a hardscaper. He owned a landscaping business, so we primarily laid patios or did retaining walls or things like that, as opposed to a guy that comes in and mulches and mows lawns. So I think I learned a lot from my father that way. I learned a hard work ethic. There's things today that I just like I was talking about doing heavy machinery. I was running a skid steer when I was 12 years old. When I was 16, we were just telling this story the other day. I was 16 years old. I had just had my license for 2 weeks. And in the winter, when you own a landscape business, you run plows in the winter because it's the way to make money.
Yep.
And my dad had me driving a F550 with, 5 guys in it down 202 to the Westchester Mercedes-Benz dealership to plow that lot. And he pulled me aside before he put me in the truck. He's like, well, don't hit a car because you're not going to college if you hit a car. So, I became very focused that day, I'd say.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
But I was getting at before too, is like, we were told, like, kind of work smarter, not harder. Like,
sure.
Don't break your back. Like, use your brain, go to college. And we were fed that whole, like, go to high school, get good grades, and get into a college. And when you do well in college, and like you'll graduate, and you'll get a great job, and you'll have the house and a white picket fence, and everything's gonna be great. And money this and money that. Like, I don't think that's how. I mean, for some people, I think that worked out, but I mean, that's I don't know. It's a weird thing to think about. This, like, where we currently are, in my age, and like, so you're a little younger than I am, but even people like 5 years younger than me, it's like we were kind of fed that, like, this, I think, fake sense of opportunity. And I don't know if it's not our parents' fault. It's not. That's just how society was.
I think it definitely part of like social norms and societal pressure. I'll say that I was very jaded about having a college degree for the first 2 or 3 years out of college when I was, just a brewer. It's like, why did I go to school and spend all this money? And I'm in a tremendous amount of debt to make sugar water and throw flowers into sugar water and then clean it all up. And it's got nothing to do with my degree. And I could have been doing this and making way more money if I'd started younger. And the more and more I've gotten older and I've been further and further away from my college years, I think that college definitely allowed me to learn to think differently, to problem solve and approach situations differently. And now that I'm in management, that I own a business, I definitely value having a degree or a background in business, because I wouldn't have been as far along as I am in that sort of line of thought had I not had a solid base for it. Because they don't really, like, in high school, are like, here's business 101. They basically explain what capitalism is and maybe how to balance a checkbook if you're lucky. And they're like, all right, see you later.
Why are we not being taught that in high school though? Like, why are we not being taught more, like, transferable skills in high school? Like, to be told at 18 that, like, you need to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life at 18 is insane to me.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. And it's just like, making a decision of, being in that kind of debt too. And it's just crazy.
I think that's actually more of what it is than anything else. It's not necessarily telling them what they have to do, but really the amount of, at 18 years old, you really have no concept of money. I mean, like, I worked in restaurants or whatever, growing up. I look back on it now, and I bought a few, I bought and sold a few of homes and moved. And I think about taking on a mortgage, and I think about being 18 years old and signing a piece of paper, having no idea what that meant, that I was taking on that amount of debt to go to school. Like, now people, or I worried, the first few months or whatever, like, oh my God, I put down a huge down payment on a home and I'm paying a mortgage and whatever, just normal things. And I think about being 18 years old and, like, being carefree and be like, yeah, sure, I got to sign this piece of paper and I get my financial aid and I am going to have a college degree, and what's $120,000? I'll be,
I'll pay it off. Yeah, no big deal.
I'll be 22 years old, but I'll figure it out then.
Yeah.
Like, I don't got to worry about it for 4 years, and then maybe another 6 months after that. Yeah, fuck it, I'll figure it out later. Like,
yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild.
Yeah, you've got no responsibility at 18.
And I'm not knocking college completely. Like, I met my best friends in college.
Sure.
I think I needed those 4 years to, like. Like, if I was 18 years old and you just threw me into the world, I definitely it would have been much more difficult than having. I lived at my parents' house for the first year of college. I actually moved out of my house my second year of college because I wanted to kind of get that, feeling of, being on my own and paying my own bills. So like I wasn't, finished with college and, being thrown to the wolves and saying, hey, figure it out. Like I wanted to kind of have that. And my dad was like, why do you want to move out? Like you have everything you want right here. And I'm like, that's exactly why I want to move out. Like I want to have, like, I know you're here. Like if I need you, you're not going to like abandon me, but like, I got to try and do this. So I was like, I love my college experience. Like I needed my college degree for my first job, which I think catapulted my entire career. But even like jobs I had after my first job, like I didn't necessarily need a college degree, but I wouldn't have excelled at that job if I didn't have my first job, which needed a degree. So it's like, hindsight's 2020 kind of deal. I don't know. So
I think that, college education should be free though. I mean, you should be able to get higher education for some level of higher education, whether it's state or not.
Something. How do we get to be a better, stronger society? And it's not by having more dumb people. It's by having smarter people, more educated people.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's got to be a way to figure that out. I mean, maybe it's not free, but maybe it's just, every year it just goes up. And
yeah, I don't, what do I know? I just make beer. So like, I shouldn't be the guy that tells people what the government should do. My opinion is that I think that there's certainly a better starting place for people to get to. And I think that, as a society, we should value, young people and we should value their education. So whatever that means, at 18, all of a sudden you're an adult and you're off on your own in the world, and you could be, going to school to get a trade or going to school to get a bachelor's degree or something. But I don't ultimately at 18 years old, I don't think you have the financial wherewithal to make those sorts of decisions.
No, we'll leave it at that.
At least most people.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, no, you don't want to get into saving the world because we don't have the answers.
I thought I did at 18.
Yeah. You make beer and I sell t-shirts. So
is that what you do?
I work at a company. So I started my career, and this isn't about me, but we'll get into it. At an arts and entertainment weekly called The Weekender, which was considered the Bible when it came to things to do and events, concerts, the bar scene, you name it. It was a weekly free newspaper, and bars paid to put ads in there. It was free for consumers to pick up, but they advertised their specials. Who was playing on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, or Saturday night. It was really a great product, but enter the internet and social media. People started advertising their goings on, on their free Facebook page. They felt that they didn't need traditional media, and traditional print media is not what it used to be by any means. So I started as an intern at The Weekender in 2004. Then I went into my internship was marketing. So I got into marketing and sales, and then I was in sales, and I was a sales director, and then I was the general manager of The Weekender before I moved on into my career in radio. So I was selling advertising on radio channels and outdoor billboards. And then I was actually hosting a radio show highlighting local artists on Saturday nights. So as an extension of, featuring the artists on Saturday, that was, play 13, 14 artists every Saturday night from 9 to 10 o'clock. I started a podcast as an extension of that the show was called Alt Natives. So I started a podcast called Alt Natives After Hours because I wanted to kind of provide a platform for the artists. Like, I could play their music, but also I wanted to get to know them. I wanted people to be able to get to know them and give them a platform where they could talk about themselves and how they started. You can do a radio interview that's 2 minutes long. And it's like, okay, well, how did you guys start? When's your next show? And it's that cookie cutter bullshit, that no one cares about.
Right. Well, they got to plug something too. So
what's that?
They have to plug something too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I wanted to kind of do the podcast as an extension of it to, give them the opportunity to have it for their own content, but also, be able to talk about who they are, not only as musicians, but we're talking about you for the past almost hour, about how you kind of got into your career. I wanted to be able to do that with them. And then the station wanted to reformat, and they went from an alternative station to like I think a 90s and now type of format. They wanted to try and target women. So they put the show on hiatus. I'm not an idiot. I knew what that meant. It's like telling your kid, like, we'll see, or maybe. Exactly. Thank you. So it's such a powerful phrase, because it gets them out of your hair for that moment, and you'll hope they forget. So they told me that, and I'm like, I'm not a 3-year-old child. I'm not a 4-year-old child. I know what that means. So I started this. I figured I could at least do this, and continue doing providing a platform where they could talk about who they are, what they do, and
sure.
I didn't want to limit it to just musicians. I wanted to kind of open it up to other people too, because I'm curious. I like hearing people's stories. I created a name for myself. I mean, not that I'm anybody special, but people have an idea of who I am around this area at least, and I've been able to create something I think that people enjoy. I just won an award recently for.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not saying that for any accolades. It's just it's a feel good thing, and I like doing it. I mean, I don't get paid to do it. It's something I'm passionate about. But back to the question that you asked, what do I do now? I work for a company called Axelrad Screen Printing and embroidery. They've been around since 2003. They opened up a brick and mortar store. I think it was 2008 or 9. And they moved in 2015 maybe, and we just moved again just this year in March. We expanded again. But I knew them from working at the Weekender. I partnered with them back in last year. I created a campaign called Shirts for the Scene. Working for local bands, we opened up a store where I just took every band's like logo, put it on a shirt, and like you could go and buy, let's just call it New Trail. You go and buy New Trail's shirt in the store, and the proceeds from that shirt would go back to you or go to New Trail.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That's cool.
Because I mean they couldn't play. They had no no income, so there's an opportunity for me to kind of help them. My thought was like, when you're doing a benefit, and what's the first thing you do? You try and find entertainment so that people come and donate their $10, see a band, and they do it all the time without question, without hesitation, and they never ask for anything in return. And it's so I was like, I wanted to do something for them. And when the show was canceled too, I was lost. I was like, I need them more than they need me, to be honest. But yeah. So I work at Axelrad Screen Printing Wilkes-Barre. We do a lot of great things there. We've printed merch for Slayer, Elton John, Breaking Benjamin, Cold, you name it. Great group there. And it's similar to you guys, where we're probably about 25, 30 employees.
That's awesome.
Close family. But yeah.
That's cool.
That's my story.
Yeah, man.
But I don't need a degree to do what I'm doing now. I just need a degree to start my career. So.
Yeah. That's a really cool story. It seems like a cool company too.
It's awesome. Yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun too. But listen, let me let you have some of your night back. As far as New Trail Brewing Company goes, what can we expect? I mean, it's November now. Technically it's December, especially by the time this is released, which is probably next week. So we'll be in December when this is released. What can we expect from New Trail this year, and any big plans for 2022?
Sure. So I mean, we are constantly, like you said, releasing a new beer every week. So you said this will air what date?
It'll probably be next week. Tuesday, Wednesday
next week. Pull up my calendar. So we next week we release Lift Pass, which is a hazy single IPA with white wheat and primarily hopped with El Dorado. So I'd say it's a little bit more lemony, but it's brewed for this time of year and people trying to get out on the slopes. And we call it a Lift Pass beer because people sort of sneak things on the rides. So
never.
Yeah, right. Never. I've never done that. We also have chocolate covered pretzel releasing next week, which is a Baltic style porter with chocolate and salt. But I'd say that you can look for a number of winter themed releases from us over the next 4 or 5 weeks, including beers like Toboggan, which is a new beer this year, Icicle, which is a fan favorite, Snow Angel, Cryosphere, which was all released last year, and Whiteout, like we talked about earlier.
Now, I did see, I think, cookie-inspired milkshake IPAs.
Yeah, that was Black Friday. We released those beers. So we released 3 beers at our tasting room, which are all sold out at this point, or by the time.
Never mind, forget it.
Yeah, but they're neat beers. They're milkshake IPAs, which are IPAs brewed with lactose and vanilla. And there was the base beer, which is Holiday Cookie, which is just lactose and vanilla. And then there was Snickerdoodle, which was lactose, vanilla, and cinnamon. And then Coconut Macaroon, which was lactose, vanilla, and coconuts.
Those milkshake IPAs are always very interesting. I was first introduced to that style of beer, I think, by Southern Tier.
Oh yeah, they had that
this whole series, yeah.
And
then Brewdog had a couple as well.
Yeah, I actually brewed the first milkshake IPA in America. So.
Get out of here!
Yep,
that's awesome.
Yeah, Tired Hands sort of iconicized the style, so we were the first ones to call it a milkshake IPA.
Oh shit, that's great.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, so we brewed a strawberry milkshake IPA at the time.
So if you were to end your career now, would that be like your pat on the back? Like I was the first one to ever.
I really hope not. I hope that if I had to end my career right now, that people would remember me for a gold medal for an American style Pilsner for a milkshake IPA.
There we go. All right.
I think that milkshake IPA is certainly a little bit more popular or trendy right now. So.
A gold medal, right?
What?
You say a gold medal?
For the Pilsner, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Something to hang your hat on.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. Definitely. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, you've had a great career so far, and you're a young man, 31 years old. I can only imagine you'll do much greater things. Maybe 2 gold medals.
Yeah, I have a couple.
So, you have a couple?
Yeah, I have a couple.
That's great.
Yeah.
You're so modest too. You don't even talk about them.
Yeah.
If I were you, I'd be wearing them right now. I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah. I should tell my girlfriend that.
I can hear her.
Yeah,
you just got kicked.
Yeah. She's like, you got such a big head. I'm like, no, I don't.
Obviously, he doesn't. If he did, he'd be wearing those medals right now.
No.
Well, Mike, listen, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I love learning about local people doing really cool things, and just like I said, adding value to the world around them. And
I had a great time on the show, so I'd be happy to come back.
I hope you did. I mean, like I said, this is a passion project for me. I don't get too tied up into follows and listeners and things like that. Of course, I would want the following that Joe Rogan or someone else like that has, but I'm just a little guy from northeastern Pennsylvania who once had a radio show and just trying to highlight people around the area that are doing cool things. So again, thank you, Mike LaRosa from Trail Brewing, the director of brewing operations. Where can people find New Trail on social media and the internet in general?
It's at New Trail Brewing primarily for our Instagram and our Facebook. And then you can find us at www.newtrailbrewing.com as well.
Very cool.
We're currently in the process of revamping our website, so hopefully that'll be up and running, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks. So
I feel like everyone is revamping the website. Whenever you talk to them.
Ours is really good right now. It's not.
Whenever you talk to anybody, people can have a website that's a year old, and they'll be like, visit our website.
We're only 2 years old.
Ours is like 3 years old. It's like a landing page. It's like, we're New Trail Brewing. Here's our Instagram feed, and here's our hours. See you later.
Yeah. So I mean, you have a tasting room, so people can come visit tasting room.
Yep. So we're open at the tasting room Wednesday through Friday from 3 to 10 p.m., Saturday from 12 to 10 p.m., and then Sunday from 12 to 6.
Cool. And then I think I saw somewhere that you like partner with like food trucks, or is there
so we do bring in food trucks. There is one that's parked there permanently right now. It's a Real Taste, which is a local Mexican food truck, taqueria truck. He rotates his menu, so it rotates. It's primarily Mexican and tacos, but it rotates. It's been everything from burgers and cheesesteaks to he had an Asian centric menu recently, so it was like lo mein, and there was some sushi and stuff like that on there too. So he tries to switch it up pretty frequently.
Very cool. Well, visit New Trail Brewing Company in Williamsport. Visit them online. You can find them in your local beer distributor. Thanks to LT Verastro. I wish your girlfriend's laugh is very infectious, and I wish I was funnier. I wish we were funnier.
Yeah,
because listening to her laugh, it makes me happy.
Yeah, she's got a good laugh.
Yeah, very good. So thank you too. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'll have to get out there and visit. I mean, it's not that far. But it was a joke too. I always say like it's amazing how when you talk about a brewery or a brew pub, it's okay to bring a child. And it's the same. It's essentially the same atmosphere as a bar, but just better lit and probably better food and things like that. But you would never take a child to a bar.
Yeah, we have a saying for that actually. We are dog friendly as well.
Okay.
So people, they message in on Facebook or Instagram or they'll call us and they say, "Are you dog friendly?" We're like, "Yeah, we're dog friendly. Leashed and well behaved dogs are welcome." Same goes for children.
I remember my kid wasn't even 1 year old yet, and we went with my wife to Cape May when she was pregnant for her baby moon, and we decided to go back the following year with my son, who was at the time almost 1. And I called Cape May Brewing Company up and I said, "Hey, listen, are kids frowned upon, or if I bring our child in here, will I get the side eye?" And they're like, "Oh, no, bring the kid."
Yeah, Saturday is like kind of like daycare day at the brewery. Yeah. So.
It's amazing. I mean, obviously, like, if I'm there with a child, I would probably have a beer, right? I'm not going to get crazy because I'm a responsible adult.
Be surprised.
But no, I'm just saying that's acceptable.
Morgan works in our tasting room.
We have gummies or cookies for the children, and we have like treats for the dogs.
Yeah, so it's.
I just think it's funny because you would never.
If you're going to bring your kid to the brewery, we're just going to load them up with sugar when they leave.
Sugar, and I'm going to love them, and I'm going to want to kiss them. I want to give them sugar. So
you have a built-in babysitter.
Yeah.
New Trail Brewing.
No.
No,
we're going to give them sugar as you're walking out the door.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Kind of like the bank. Here's a lollipop.
This is what happens.
Goodbye.
I just think it's amazing. You never do that at a bar. You would never take a kid to a bar.
I love all the children and all the dogs that come into our
You'd be surprised.
Tasting room. Like I want to love every child and every dog that comes in that door.
It sounds like a babysitter club. I mean, I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me.
My parents brought me to the bar.
Give me all your loving.
VFW, right? That's best for you. All right. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate getting to know you and finding out more about New Trail Brewing Company. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
For sure.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
See you soon.
All right. See you.
Mm-hmm.